Have you ever wondered what it's really like inside the mind of an escort? Not the stereotype, not the fantasy, but the person behind the makeup, the smile, and the perfectly crafted illusion. Behind that exterior is a human being who carries secrets heavier than gold and pain sharper than truth. This is not a story about glamour. It's a story about survival, about the dark psychology of living two lives, one that the world judges and another that the world will never see. In today's world, the global sex work industry is estimated to generate over $180 billion a year. That's more than the combined revenue of the music, movie, and video game industries. And within that number are millions of people, many who never imagined they'd end up there. Some chose it, some were forced, but almost all carry emotional scars that never make the headlines. Most escorts don't start out chasing money for luxury, they chase stability. In fact, according to a 2023 sociological report from the University of Ottawa, more than 65% of individuals in the escort industry entered due to financial hardship or limited job opportunities. For many, it was never about rebellion. It was about rent. But beneath that decision lies something deeper, a pattern psychologists call survival justification. When a person faces repeated rejection by the traditional system, their brain learns to rationalize extreme options. The idea of "I'd never do that" slowly becomes maybe just once. And that single moment of compromise can spiral into an entire lifestyle built on secrecy. To understand an escort's mind, you must first understand their loneliness. Studies show that over 70% of sex workers report symptoms of chronic anxiety, and nearly half experience signs of clinical depression. Imagine constantly shifting your personality to match the fantasies of others, yet never feeling truly known by anyone. That's not empowerment, that's emotional camouflage. For some, it starts with a moment of desperation. For others, curiosity. But almost all describe their first experience as a split in identity, what psychologists call ego dissonance. They feel as if one part of them is acting while another watches in disbelief. Over time, the two selves, the performer and the person, blur together. That's where the mental battle begins. Society often paints escorts as either victims or villains, but rarely as complex humans. The truth sits somewhere in between. Many were once college students, single parents, or people fleeing abusive homes. According to a 2022 United Nations report, nearly 40% of sex workers worldwide were victims of domestic abuse before entering the trade. And for many, the industry became a twisted form of control, the illusion of power in a world that once stripped it away. But control built on illusion eventually cracks. Clients may believe they're buying fantasy, but escorts are selling fragments of themselves: time, energy, attention, empathy. Over years, that takes a toll. Neuroscientists have found that chronic emotional suppression can shrink activity in the brain's amygdala, the area that regulates fear and empathy. In plain terms, the more someone hides their feelings, the less connected they become to them. That's why so many in the industry struggle with emotional numbness. They're not cold, they're exhausted. They've learned to detach as a means of protection. One escort once told a journalist, "You can't let every interaction touch your soul, or you'll lose it." That sentence alone captures the silent trauma behind the performance. But the mind can only compartmentalize for so long. Behind the polished image is often a cycle of guilt, shame, and identity confusion. Research from the Journal of Trauma and Dissociation found that 52% of sex workers report symptoms consistent with PTSD, not from violence alone, but from emotional overload. The constant pretending, the double life, and the social stigma become invisible chains. Then there's the judgment. Society loves to moralize without understanding. In a 2024 Pew Research survey, 67% of people admitted they hold negative perceptions of sex workers, while only 12% said they feel empathy. That lack of compassion isolates people further. Imagine waking up every day knowing that the world sees your survival as sin. The irony is that many escorts are some of the most emotionally intelligent individuals you'll meet. They can read tone, predict behavior, and manage volatile personalities in seconds. In psychological terms, that's hypervigilance, a trauma response developed from years of needing to sense danger before it happens. What most call intuition, they call self-defense. Economically, the story doesn't get lighter. The average escort in a developed country might earn between $50 and $300 an hour, but that doesn't mean wealth. Most face unstable income, lack health insurance, and live under constant financial anxiety. Many can't open savings accounts due to unreported income. Others fall into predatory financial cycles because they can't explain their job history to banks or landlords. Socially, isolation deepens. Real relationships become difficult when trust itself has been commodified. Studies show that over 60% of sex workers hide their profession from family and friends. The result is a life lived in fragments, bits of truth here, pieces of performance there, until even the person themselves can't tell which version is real. The darkness isn't always external. Some carry deep self-loathing from societal conditioning. They internalize every insult, every judgment. Over time, that creates what therapists call shame fatigue. It's the exhaustion that comes from constantly feeling unworthy. And with that fatigue comes addiction, not always to substances, but to distraction, social media, spending, even constant work. Anything to escape silence, because silence means facing reality. But let's not pretend it's all despair. Some find empowerment and reclaim control of their narrative. In recent years, social activists have pushed for decriminalization and safer work environments. In New Zealand, where sex work was decriminalized in 2003, reports of violence against workers dropped by 30% within 5 years. When stigma decreases, safety increases. That's the paradox. Society's judgment often creates the very danger it condemns. Inside the escort's mind lives a war between independence and invisibility. Many describe feeling powerful one minute and worthless the next. They live in a world that praises confidence but punishes honesty. They crave connection but fear exposure. It's a psychological tug-of-war that leaves scars you can't see. And yet, there's another layer: the clients. They represent society's hidden demand. Without demand, there's no market. But instead of addressing loneliness, mental health, and social disconnection, society focuses on shame. The truth is that both sides of this transaction often share the same wound: the fear of being unloved. When we reduce complex humans to moral labels, we miss the bigger picture. The economic systems that push people into desperation, the lack of mental health support, the gender inequalities, and the emotional neglect that begins in childhood. Every story has a root. Every decision has a cause. If you talk to former escorts who've left the industry, most will tell you they don't miss the money. They miss the feeling of control, the illusion that they mattered. One woman in a 2023 BBC interview said, "I didn't want to sell my body. I wanted to sell the feeling that I was important to someone." That line breaks through every stereotype, because at its core, the mind of an escort is a mirror of society's failures, its obsession with money, its neglect of empathy, and its fear of truth. Behind every confident smile is a story of survival, a mind fighting to be seen as human again. Recovery isn't easy. Many who leave the industry battle with reintegration. Without stable income or emotional support, relapse, returning to old habits, is common. A 2022 study found that 58% of former sex workers re-entered within 2 years due to financial instability. Healing requires more than therapy. It requires belonging. Belonging, that's the word most of them use. Not love, not safety, belonging. Because to belong means being accepted without judgment. And that's something society rarely offers to people it deems immoral. But maybe morality isn't about what someone does to survive. Maybe it's about how we treat them when they're trying to start over. The human mind is resilient. People rebuild from ruins every day. But the scars of a double life don't fade overnight. For many, therapy, art, spirituality, and community work become lifelines. Slowly, they rediscover the version of themselves that existed before survival became a job. So, what does it really mean to live as an escort? It means living in the shadows of society's contradictions, where judgment and demand coexist, where power and pain share the same bed, where freedom comes at the cost of self-forgiveness. The next time someone reduces an escort story to gossip or scandal, remember this: behind every transaction is a human heart learning to survive a world that gave them few choices. Behind every performance is a person silently screaming for understanding. Inside the mind of an escort lives both tragedy and strength. The tragedy of being unseen, and the strength of surviving anyway. Because when the makeup fades, the lights dim, and the phone stops ringing, all that's left is a person asking the same question we all ask. Who am I, really? And that's the question at the heart of every human story. This is Temptology, exploring the minds that society misunderstands, the psychology behind the choices we judge, and the truth beneath the surface. If you found this episode thought-provoking, subscribe for more deep dives into the human mind, only on Temptology.